Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another evening edition of Southbridge Street Live. It is my great honor to introduce my guest. This is Dr. Phylis Canion of Organic Emporium. And tonight we're going to be talking about holistic living, the business that you own, the store Organic Emporium, and then we're also going to be talking about what CBD oil is, because we're seeing this everywhere now in Victoria. But I just wanted to welcome you and thank you so much for taking time tonight.
Well, thank you for having me, and I have to say that it's great that we can share what we have learned in the organic field over all the years. I lived overseas for 20 years and had a great learning experience at looking at diets and lifestyles among people outside of our culture. Right. And for me, it was always an interest, because every time I came back to the States, it seemed like more people were sicker with newer and different diseases that we never saw overseas.
Where did you live overseas?
We were in South America for 8 years, and we got transferred to West Africa. We lived in Gabon for 5, and then we were transferred to Asia. And we lived about an hour out of Hong Kong in communist China.
Wow, so you've actually really been inundated with that culture over years, not just visiting, but to be immersed in their culture, which means that you were immersed in their food.
Yep.
Food as first medicine.
Exactly.
Herbs, remedies, and things like that. So,
and it's amazing when you look at their cultures and their longevity as opposed to ours. In the United States, in 1950, we were ranked about 10th for longevity, and now we've dropped into the 48 to 50 category.
That's astonishing.
And that's amazing to me, having traveled on every continent except Antarctica, that is that many foreign countries that have better longevity than we do in this country.
Now, I know that there's probably no easy answer to that, but I'd love to know what you attribute.
Well, after studying nutrition and food as long as I have, I can totally associate it to the food that we consume in this country.
Can we talk about that?
We are more into factory food instead of farm food. And in most of the countries that we have traveled, they don't do so much factory food.
Right.
Most of it is produced in the United States, and more countries have now banned our food from traveling into those countries because of the ingredients. In the UK, as an example, they refuse to carry about 40 to 50% of our food that we carry here because it has high fructose syrup in it and other ingredients that are not accepted in foreign countries.
I really want to talk about you, because, you know, as a biographer, I have lots of questions for you as a person, but I want to talk about the food label, right? Because you said this high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
What are some of our killers?
Well, that's probably one of the bigger ones. In the beginning, it became public. Look at the label, and if it says sugar, you don't want to get it, especially if that was the first ingredient. Then the industry started to change it. Now we have 32 different words for sugar. High fructose corn syrup was one of the first ones that came out. And people would look at the label and say, oh my gosh, Dr. Canion, but I ate it, but it doesn't have sugar in it. And it's like, but it has an alternative called high fructose corn syrup. We know now that the majority of our crops of corn in the United States are genetically modified. So we are ingesting something that our system will not let us completely digest. And that is tricking the body. And that is when I think when we really introduced that heavily is when we started to see different disorders creep up in the United States. Because at my age, and I'm almost 70, so I think back as a kid, I never heard of anybody that had lupus or fibromyalgia or kids that were autistic or ADD. We just didn't have that. So we look at it and say, well, why has that become so prevalent now? And the only thing I can associate it with to me, what has changed the most, and that's what we eat. Growing up as a kid, we never had a microwave. We didn't drink out of plastic bottles. If there was a Coke at a church picnic, it was in a glass bottle. There was just no plastic that many years ago. I remember giving my sister milk in a glass bottle. How many babies drink out of a glass bottle now?
Right.
You know, and it's just so many of those changes that we have. We didn't have the microwave. We didn't have the Teflon. We didn't have all of that. And now that is the mainstream in every home. Make it quick. Pop it in the microwave.
Now, what inspired you to want to become a doctor?
What inspired me to do what I do was having been sick for about 4 years. I got sick when I was 13, and when I had a mild stroke and was put into our local hospital, that really started my passion. I lost a kidney, then I had a hysterectomy, and the
I'm
conversation.
so sorry to interrupt you. How old were you when you had a stroke?
27.
Wow.
So very young, and
Right.
fortunate that I recovered from it. And I kept asking the doctors, like, well, what is the prognosis? What do we do for now? Well, there's, medicine that you're going to have to take. And I'm like, but I'm 27 and I'm not sure if that's what I want to do. But if you don't, this is what's going to happen. So of course, in the 70s, we didn't have internet and all of these fast ways. I mean, we carry cell phones, which to me are like the old Encyclopedia Britannica, because you can look up
Sure.
anything instantly. And I started reading about natural cures. And that is really what sparked my interest. I had a degree in psychology.
So you were not a medical doctor at
No,
that time?
not at all.
Oh, wow. So
And then I went back and got my master's in nutrition, and then I went back and studied orthomolecular medicine, which is the study of the body at the cellular level. And that's my passion. I love to help people that are at their wits' end or at the end of the plank, and they just don't know what to do. And then we start introducing to them a better food regime, find out where their system is out of balance, make recommendations for foods that are healthier to them. And we see such phenomenal results, from cancer, stage 4 cancers, all the way down to simple cures as fibromyalgia and lupus, just by
simple
changing the
cures
diet.
for those
Absolutely.
by just changing the diet.
Absolutely.
That's
And
phenomenal.
cancer. I mean, all the cancers that I see in the young kids now, we change the diet and we can see them back in remission in 6 to 8 weeks just because of changing the diet.
Okay, that's phenomenal. Can we stay with that for a minute?
Yep, absolutely.
What would you say? What do you say to a child who is in cancer and you are working through their diet? What are some of the changes that they need to make
Well,
right
the
away?
3 cancer feeders that I always say to everyone every day that I see anyone that comes into the store, I always tell them there are 3 cancer feeders that you really have to stop. That is caffeine, that is milk, and that is sugar. We are the only species on Earth that drinks someone else's milk after weaning. That industry has changed over time. How milk is processed has changed over time. Years ago, everyone in my age group that's watching will know that, they delivered milk and it was in a glass container.
Yes.
And now we've moved to plastic.
And it wasn't convenient. I mean, it wasn't like in a gallon.
No,
It was
exactly.
just a bit.
It was amazing. So that is what prompted the birth of non-dairy. Now we see so much almond milk and coconut milk and oat milk and all these other non-dairy options, because so many people have really decided to get off of the dairy. We have a huge selection of cheese that is non-dairy. It's made from coconut milk. The ice creams are made from coconut milk, and they're fabulous. And our body digests them much easier because we lose that lactose enzyme, which is why with time, and you'll hear people say, oh, I eat that and I get a little gassy, or I eat it and my stomach gets a little bit upset. Yes, because we've lost that enzyme to actually break it down. Caffeine, I am adamantly opposed to caffeine.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit. Tell me about the adverse effects of caffeine and why that happens.
And I use myself as an example because as I tried to maintain my health as I got older, the one thing that I noticed caused me the most problems were caffeine. It can make your system acidic. I have so many people that will come to me that'll say, oh my gosh, I have terrible stomach problems. I'm like, do you drink caffeine? And they're like, oh yeah, but I only have 2 or 3 cups a day. If we get them off of the caffeine, their stomach issues go away within a week. It's amazing.
Is caffeine difficult to wean yourself from?
For me, it's not, but for some, it is very difficult, very difficult. And we have caffeine in so many farms now because it's not just coffee, but we have it in all these soft drinks that are available now that, again, as a kid growing up, we didn't have it. You know, I remember as a kid, we drank Nesbitt's grape drink. They had a grape and an orange drink, and that in a bottle, in a glass bottle, and that's what we had all the time. And now, you know, and unknown to many people, Mountain Dew has an exorbitant amount of caffeine in it. And now we have all of these energy drinks. Everybody says, well, I just don't have any energy and I drink that. Totally loaded with caffeine.
So what, for someone who, you know, doesn't feel like they have a lot of energy, what advice would you give to them?
First thing I would tell them is to get off of the caffeine and to get on a good multivitamin. Caffeine has a tendency to suck a lot of that stuff out of our system. And so decaffeinated is great. That's why it was born, because people were like, okay, well, what is an alternative? And now we've got some great selections of decaffeinated coffees. I don't sell any caffeine in the store, either store, either in a tea or coffee format. Everything that we have is caffeine free or decaffeinated. Decaffeinated means that it's only 99.7% caffeine free. So we carry several brands that actually have no caffeine. We have a fabulous coffee that's made from a Ramon nut. It tastes just exactly like coffee, exactly, except there is no caffeine in it because it's from a nut and not a coffee bean.
Is that why sometimes when people are trying to get off of caffeine, they get headaches and things like that because their bodies are going through?
It's a stimulant. And it is probably the most abused. And I would love it if every child in the United States could get off of the sodas and the caffeine that they consume.
Okay, so now I want to tell you about sugar because I have had a firsthand experience with the keto diet. How do you feel about that diet?
I think it's great, very successful.
How absolutely incredible it is when you're about 24 to 48 hours in and you realize I really have a strong addiction to sugar because it's craving and you're upset and when you're literally going through withdrawal. Is it true that withdrawing from sugar is of the same effects as drugs?
Absolutely.
Where did all the sugar come from?
You know, and there again, it's amazing. You know, before sugar was sugar, but now we put sugar cane is treated with more chemicals now to make it whiter, to make it sweeter. And we don't realize, but it's very difficult to go to the store and find a product that does not have some type of a sweetener in it, whether it's those that we recognize like aspartame or those that we don't recognize like maltodextrin. So like I said, there's about 32 different names for sugars now. And people just have to realize to look for those names on product because if they don't see the SUGAR, then they just think that there is not any in it. What people don't realize is that everything we eat gets converted into glycogen because our brain has to have that in order to function properly. So people say, well, you have to have sugar. Well, no. You don't, because everything we eat gets converted to glycogen anyway. What we don't need is that, what we call table sugar. Then I look around, and in the islands, you know, where they eat a tremendous amount of sugar. I went to the sugarcane fields. They're eating sugarcane all day long. They chop and they cut a piece off and they put it in their mouth and they're chewing on it, and their teeth are absolutely spectacular. Amazing. And it's like, oh my gosh, but what you're eating is sugar. And they're like, but this is the raw, real deal. It's only our sugar that has, I think, now been treated with so much stuff is where we've gotten to the addiction to sugar. And it's in everything. You can go look at a meat package at the store and it'll have some kind of a sugar in it. I'm amazed at some products that contain sugar. Like, why would you put that in there?
What is
because
it for?
It makes us addicted to it.
Wow, because that's what that is. Do we, this might be a little bit too controversial, but like, so we as I think most Americans look at the FDA as these are our guiding, this is our guidelines. They set the standards, so we should follow them. So what's being put out there that's really bad for you?
I disagree, and I'm a frequent caller to the FDA because I want answers. For as an example, on our food pyramid that we have now, on the very bottom of the food pyramid, it says 8 to 11 servings of carbohydrates that we need a day. If we ate that 8 to 11 servings, that calculates to about a 1 liter bottle full of pure sugar. We cannot metabolize that much. We drink caffeine, it stimulates the pancreas to dump a little more insulin. If it doesn't know where to go, we put it into fat storage. And that's why we see so many people that have developed this around their waist. Young people, very young, that have done that. And it's just like, get off the sugar and the caffeine first, and you'll notice a difference in weight loss. And that's why the keto diet has become so popular. And as you look with almost all diets, I've gone through and compared, and there are thousands of diets. And what do they all basically say? The same thing. Get off the caffeine and get off the starch. You know, there's the cabbage diet, and there's this diet, and there's that diet, and the soup diet, and all. But what do? They really want you to get off of the sugar and starches. I am adamant that we watch our food combination, because we can eat a lot of greens with protein, and that is a fabulous combination. What's not a good combination is when we put the greens in with the starch. That's not good, and it's a little bit harder for our system to digest. Then people will say to me, well, what did they do 100 years ago? Because 100 years ago, steak and potatoes were great. Yes, our steaks were this big, our potatoes were that big, and we worked all day. And now our potatoes are this big because somewhere along the line they've become genetically modified. And now we have this massive potato.
And isn't it kind of interesting that you will go into a restaurant, and if a potato is a little potato, you'll be almost insulted. You're not getting your money's worth or whatever. And there's many places that it's the bigger the potato is, the
absolutely,
is the game.
And again, that's what's changed. I mean, I'm amazed. I taught a class at the college last semester, and I said I'm in awe when I go into the grocery store and I look at jumbo eggs. Really? Our eggs are jumbo? How did that happen? Because when I was a kid growing up 60 years ago, an egg was an egg, right? And it was all in paper cartons. Now we have jumbo eggs in styrofoam cartons. I only buy mine, if I need to buy any, because I have chickens, in a paper carton. And I buy what is a regular farm fresh egg. So there's so much.
Because we don't need, is it because it's genetically modified? Is it because the chicken was genetically modified?
Something has been altered. And of course, these chickens are given feed, that has growth hormones in it, get them, bigger, faster, and that's a very unfortunate.
What about sugar alternatives? Because I keep hearing about stevia, but I can't stand the taste. So I was wondering if you look at...
I am always careful when people come to me and say, okay, I'm going to get off the sugar because I know it's bad for me. So what is a substitute? What do you have that's artificial? And I'm like, oh no, we don't do anything artificial. You don't want to ingest anything that's artificial. What you want is something that is natural. We recommend xylitol, which should come from a birch tree, or we recommend monk fruit, which comes from the monk fruit.
I keep hearing about monk fruit. Yes.
Amazing. So it has a very low glycemic index. So you can eat monk fruit and it won't raise your sugar levels, your insulin, so quick. You can, and that's what you have to be careful of. And I've worked with the FDA, and I'm hoping at some point, one thing that we can get added to the food label is what the glycemic index of that food is. The glycemic index is the rate your body converts that food to sugar.
I understand.
So you can have a handful of peanuts, and the glycemic index on that is about 2, which means it's going to take a long time to convert it to sugar. You can have an equal serving of watermelon, and the glycemic index is 100.
Right.
which means as soon as you eat it, it's converted to sugar.
It's amazing to me too in the diabetic diet how they, they give you the portion sizes and they show you like, a chicken should really be like the size of your palm.
Exactly.
And then it says like a serving of watermelon and it's 2 cubes of dice.
Yep.
And I had never thought of, because that's how high in natural sugars
Absolutely.
the watermelon is. And would you even buy a watermelon and cut into it if you could only have 2 dice?
Yep.
So I just thought
No.
that was fascinating, but it really gave me, one of the first, one of my first experiences with what caffeine and sugar would do for you is when I was pregnant in my last trimester, and the baby wasn't moving around a lot, and I was starting to get some concern, and they put like a cold compress,
Right.
and that wasn't doing much, and I think it was like spoon something, and then they gave me a little bit of Coca-Cola. And I will never forget just consuming it and almost instantly. And I would never have believed that it would go through your body that fast, that it was enough to move around and get things stimulated
The
again.
caffeine, yeah.
And I mean, it was just almost instant. Now that was, was that something normal? Can your body like just process it that fast? Mm-hmm. Isn't that
Because with me not consuming any caffeine, I could have a cap full off of a water bottle of coffee or a soda,
right?
and instantly I would have a hot flash and my stomach would hurt. Just a cap full. Mm-hmm. And that's when people will say, well, I don't have but 1 or 2 cups in the morning. What always scares me about that is I'm like, what size cup are we talking about? Mm-hmm. To me, a cup would be 8 ounces. Mm-hmm. But I see people walking out of gas stations with giant cups of coffee. It's amazing.
Is it hard for you? Do you want to be like, I know you didn't ask me, but I'm just going to slide over here and say.
I am adamant. And everybody is amazed. We'll go to a social and somebody will say, oh, well, here, Dr. Canion, here, have a little cookie or have a, no. And they're like, it's just a little piece. My mother did that for years. Just taste it. No, Mom. Because I remember very vividly when I felt bad, and I don't want to go back there. So, I can give that up.
Wow,
and I love it. I tell people all the time, remember that nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And it's amazing. And it's very true. It's very difficult now because our food is so tainted and so adulterated and full of so many additives and preservatives. I have a potato in my office that I microwaved 12 years ago. Still looks the same. I bought chicken nuggets for a kid in a box. I still have it in my office. They still look the same. They're 8 years old, 8 years expired. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, so why? Because as a kid growing up, I remember my mother would bake a loaf of bread on Saturday. She said, we have to eat it by the end of the weekend or it'll get moldy. And it did. I mean, and we loved it. And we put butter all over the top of it. It was awesome. Now you buy a loaf of bread, and so much of it has azotocarbamide in it, it can sit there for a week or 2 before it'll even mold.
It's funny that you should say that because I'm like, wow, this really actually should have expired. And I'm like, wow, that's another whole week. It's been sitting there. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
Pretty
And that's
amazing.
just the stuff that we put in it to have it last longer.
What are 3 questions that most people come to you and ask when it comes to health-related topics and how to help them through products that are sold at Organic
Probably
Emporium?
the biggest questions, people will come in and say, why am I so tired? Why can I not sleep? Why am I overweight? And why am I constipated? Those are probably the biggest questions that I get. In all the years of me traveling and doing research, I look at where we have so much predominant cancer now. We see a lot of colon cancer, colon rectal cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. And I think, isn't that amazing? Because those are all organs of detoxification. We're not passing stuff through our system as quickly as we should. I've always contended that whatever we eat should be in and out of the system in about 18 to 24 hours. I'll be generous and say up to 36. But we have to get that stuff constantly moving. It's no different than if you put water in a pet dish and leave it sit in the sun, how quickly it'll develop algae. The water will get that green tint to it, right? I use that analogy. I think it's the same thing that happens in our system with our body temperature, supposed to be at 98.6. This stuff sits there, and it sits there too long. And it becomes toxic in our system. Because, you know, you can look at statistics with women that have had breast cancer and how many of them have had constipation. And I know for me that probably about 50% of the women that I have seen that were sent to me by oncologists with breast cancer, they were constipated or had some gut issue. So once we take them off the caffeine, a lot of the gut issue erased itself. And then once we changed their diet and had them stop microwaving using Teflon and stuff like that, then they just got better and better and better. It's amazing.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, what about, let's shift gears and talk about CBD oil, because I see it a lot now. I see it in different forms. I want to talk about what it is and to be able to explain to, you know, our community what it's not.
So Governor Abbott approved industrialized hemp for use in the state of Texas about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Time goes by so quickly. For kids that were having seizures.
Right.
And it was phenomenal, the results. What has now happened, December 18th of last year, the president signed the new farm bill. Every 5 years, our farm bill gets changed. The terminology is changed, the format is changed. And what changed this year was, for the first time in 65 years, hemp was taken off, or anything hemp derived was taken off the controlled substance list. So the market has been ready for it. What concerns me is how much is sold that I don't think is the quality that we're looking for. Now, Indiana, it is the law in Indiana that you cannot sell CBD unless it has a QR reader code on the package and the FDA required supplement fact.
So what is the first thing that you
The
said?
QR reader code is a little digital code. You can scan it with an app on your iPhone, and it will tell you everything about the product from seed to shelf. It is amazing. Because I have had numerous people approach me asking me why I don't carry a particular brand. And I'm like, because the label only says CBD and this is what's in it. It doesn't have what I think should be required. Now, I worked with Senator Cornyn because I wanted him to pass on the farm bill this with the hemp. And he did. Now, and I've contacted him and said, now what do we need to do to make it the law in the state of Texas? And he said, well, you have to go to the local. So I have been in touch with them, and that is something that I think we're working on, and that will become mandatory in the state of Texas.
Okay, so the naive way to look at it, or the way that I want to, maybe let me rephrase that, is to educate people. Is CBD oil going to get you high?
No, because if it is CBD, and we don't, none that we carry at the store is higher than 0.3. We don't want the THC in it. That is, and there's the confusion is people will see that it says CBD, you know, cannabinoid oil, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do any drugs. But what they don't understand, it's a different part of the plant that does not contain the hallucinogenic part, which is the THC.
Where on, do you know on the plant where that goes or how that works?
That is, and of course now it's really different because there's so many different plants that are being grown, because now they're trying to grow just the plant without the THC in it. But if you go and you look at a schematic and you'll see of a hemp plant, it will show you where the THC is, and then it'll show you where the CBD is. Now, we have CBD receptors 1 and 2 in our system. When we take the CBD oil, it activates our receptors to work. What do they work with? Pain, inflammation, depression, anxiety, the heart, cancer. We have all ranges of physicians sending people to us to get our CBD for a variety of reasons. A lot of people that have had some type of joint replacement, or whether it's knee or hip or
Now,
whatever.
is this something that's ingested, or is it put topically?
We have a variety of applications. We have a balm that can be rubbed on. We have a freeze that is also a roller. We have a patch. We have water. We have chocolate. We have honey. We have coffee, decaf coffee that's infused with the CBD. We have soft gels, we have gummies, we have capsules. It's amazing because different applications really do apply for different people.
And as a nutritionist, you recommend CBD oil?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have had such phenomenal success with it. And I tell them I would rather you take one soft gel of CBD instead of drinking a half of a Diet Coke out of an aluminum can because I think that's toxic. And the physicians have been very, very good in Victoria at recognizing the benefit of CBD. It's been great. It's been very good. Again, there's a lot that's not the quality that we carry, and that's what concerns me. I had a lady call the other day. She had bought some from us. She ran out. She picked some up along the way at a gas station, barely made it home. She felt so sick and was so high and disoriented. And I told her, bring your bottle in and let me look at it as opposed to what I have. It had no QR reader code on it. It had no FDA supplement fact. It had to have had some THC in it. And that's where we have to be
very, very careful.
Yep, exactly.
Well, so let me kind of end it with, what are some things that are sold at your store that are unique? Because off air, we were talking about how incredible that was for you as a child to have been with so many doctors here in our community and having them turn around as you are degreed and doing things and opening your store, that they would bring their patients to you. So what are some of the things that you have available at our Organic Emporium that are
and I
hard
think
to get?
There's so much because everybody loves their sweets, right? They love their ice cream. We have the healthier version of it. We have the organic and the non-GMO. They love their chips. Because corn is so genetically modified, we try to stay away from it. So we will only carry chips unless they are organic and non-GMO. And of course, non-GMO means non-genetically modified.
Right.
Because so much of our stuff has been genetically modified again, and that leaves it undigestible. The kids like Cheetos. We have Cheetos made out of peanut butters. And now with the keto diet and the paleo diet, people are really just don't care for anything sweet. And if we can get their body balanced, you really won't crave the sweet. I am amazed in America is how much sweet is consumed. The average American consumes 125 pounds of chocolate a year. And I always say, I don't eat any chocolate, so somebody is getting my 125 pounds. So it's fascinating. And then people say to me, well, why do I crave sweets? Why do I crave carbs? And we have so many people that say that now.
So why do I?
So because your body is out of balance. And it's from your diet. Absolutely. So.
Thank you for that. So going back to my final question, knowing what you know now and the experiences that you have, going back to your 13-year-old self, what would you have told her? What advice would you have given her?
I think back because when I was 13, we were active. I was an very active swimmer. We walked, we rode our bike. Mother fixed everything healthy because the selection of food then was not near what it was now. Mother never bought food that was already prepared. She always fixed everything. And I think, that's why I probably went as long as I did until I really got sick,
Mm-hmm.
because the diet was really pretty good.
Right.
And that was, I mean, that was a great thing. And the doctors would always say, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky, Phyllis. You're just
Mm-hmm.
so lucky." And I'm like, but how much of that has to do with me being active? And until I got sick, and then for 4 years, I just didn't think I could get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I did feel better, it's like I am passionate that everything I eat has to be something that my system can digest.
I see.
And that's what we focused on, and it's been great. And I haven't changed at all from then.
Are you available? Because I know that you have 2 stores.
Yes.
But how do you want someone who is interested in changing their nutrition and putting their bodies back in balance? How hard is it or easy is it to get a hold of you?
Call Organic Emporium. I try to be there Monday through Thursday and make myself available. For a long time, I did see people on a one-to-one basis, but the girls at the store and myself felt like we were missing so many people that came in that just had a question.
I see.
My doctor said that I should stop this. What would you recommend that I do? What my doctor wants me to do this, and I don't, where do I start? And so that's why I like to make myself available, because it's like, okay, no dairy, but that's great. This is what we have as an alternative that you can do. And so I try to do that, and that seems to work out. And then Friday, I try to be at my Quero store.
That's your Quero
to help
store?
those.
Very
Yep, exactly.
nice. Thank you
So-
so much for everything that you're doing in the community to bring us organics and educate us.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
So I do
We're happy to
appreciate
do
your
it.
time.
There's so much
Yes,
out
well,
there.
I would love for you to come back and we can talk more.
Would love it.
Yeah, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for
Share
your time
whatever
this
we can
evening.
share.
Absolutely. Dr. Phylis Canion from Organics Emporium, thank you very much. And thank you all for watching Southbridge Street Live.